Greetings, welcome to SimEx QuickDraft. Now firstly, drafting up a SimEx is never easy, but this tool brings together a lot of experience over the previous years that we've had with creating SimExes. It's going to help you draft content, giving you more time to tailor the material to the specific scenarios and learning outcomes that you desire. Have fun along the way. By clicking this box over here, it's going to take you to a SimEx timetable. Work through this from top to bottom by either deselecting the content you do not wish or including or editing the sample content suggested. The default is that all content is selected. Whilst materials are spread over 3 days, that's days 0, 1 and 2, there's no need to run a 3-day SimEx. Simply select the content you would like to use from amongst the 3 days and then consolidate it into the time you've planned for. Also on this page, it's worth pointing out the delete your selection button. This will simply clear everything that you've deselected and return it to the default of yes. There's also a little button here for acronyms if you come across those that you don't understand. Now we've reached the SimEx timetable. This is a classic SimEx timetable that's set up with the inject document or code number to start with on the left hand side. The EMS function, this is simply the key roles that are involved with managing an emergency response, and they are roughly defined within these 9 categories. There's the title of the inject, a few more inject details, the actions that are expected from that inject, the mode of delivery, who it's addressed to, who it comes from, the location, if there's multiple locations, basically if it's not a desktop exercise, timing for inject release, the deadline for the task to be completed, whether it's been actually completed or it was cancelled, and who is responsible for issuing the inject. I'd like you to note these 2 buttons at the top of the screen, full selection and your selection. Full selection is the default, and that covers everything that is within the timetable, both those things you've selected out and all of those things that are currently in. Now as you go, you'll likely want to see what you have remaining, and you will select this button here to make a consolidation of your work. So just keep a note of this, because if you select your selection, then a bunch of stuff might end up disappearing that you want to refer back to. So always return it back to full selection. Okay, now we're going to start working through an example. As we work through, I want you to note we're going to be selecting from a range of 2 different types of button. One of these ones within day 0, and later on we're going to be using and selecting from this range of buttons up here. So let's move on with the aims and objectives. By clicking this button, it will give you a range of choices of introduction options that you can select against. So if you don't like this one, for example, select no, and it will be taken out of the consolidation at the end. We want to keep in the desktop exercise, and then we have a whole range of aims and objectives that you might like to consider. Possibly some of them won't be interesting for you, or all of them won't be interesting for you, in which case you'll simply write your own, but these at least get you started. Here's a list of typical tools and materials that one needs for a SimEx, and then we can move on to the SimEx role players. So we go to this table here, and this gives you some of the typical positions that are to be found within a SimEx. And you'll start drafting in the names of people that are going to be helping you for that. It's also good to have a SimEx organizational chart, and here's a sample, and you can simply click on this and update accordingly. Once you've completed, okay, now we go on to the participant list, and this gives you a very nice little list in which you can start drafting up those participants you think are going to come along. To start off with, you're just going to put their names and some simple details in, and then with time, as you start receiving their information on travel plans and joining, you can add the details in as you go. This is a nice way just to keep it all together, and we return back to our SimEx timetable. And we then move on to our SimEx ground rules. These are very typical rules that you will talk about during the briefing exercise. Again, if some of them are not relevant, you can deselect them from your tool. And here's a range of frequently asked questions that you can tailor and update accordingly. So we carry on moving down the list. Obviously, you're going to need to set up your country background, and here you can decide whether you want to use real-life information of an existing country or make up one completely. Safe to say, I've given you a range of options that you can draw from, and also update websites accordingly. This is also a good opportunity to decide whether you want to use the disaster preparedness planning tool, in this case the DRR and DPP Buster, of which I've given links within the example. Alternatively, you can use a makeup country, and here's an example that we typically use. And by clicking this link, we'll take you to a fictitious population breakdown. Once you've completed that, you then go on to your early warning scenario. Again, this is a great opportunity to decide whether you want to use our early warning tool, Early Warning Buster. Again, links are included within the tool. Or if you don't have enough time, you can simply skip over that and provide information that brings people immediately into emergency response. However, by clicking this, we'll give you an example that you can adapt for your exercise. Just want to point out now that this is actually going to be an area that I improve significantly within the SimEx QuickDraft tool in the coming months, but for now this gives you a good head start. So you'll continue to move through the tool along the lines as I've shown you. Before we move on into day one, I want to draw your attention to something called a hot debrief, and you'll see this at least twice per day during the following 2 days. Simply select this hyperlink, and it will give you a quick breakdown of what is normally expected to be discussed during this. Now we move swiftly on into day one. Again, you're going to continue looking down the list and deciding what you want to include. So, of course, we're interested in unpolished assessment data, and so what we're going to do is see that this is under the EMS function programs, and the inject details are under 1PR1. So I'm going to select the programs button here, and this gives us a list of all of the programs, emails, and other information that are going to be included within the SimEx. And this is very nice because it gives you a running feeling for how the injects are going to unfold during the course of the SimEx, and you can then adapt and tailor those accordingly. But as we go, we'll just take one by one, and in this case we've got 1PR1, and we can select this hyperlink, which will take you to the actual document where there is some of the raw data that was mentioned within the email. We're going to keep that, and we like the email, and we can tailor this accordingly and then use it during our SimEx. So we keep that, we leave it on yes, and return to the timetable. Now we have an interagency assessment meeting which we need to consider. Let's just say, for example, that we might not want to include this one, but let's just look back now on 1RM1, so it's response management. We're going to select RM, response management, 1RM1, and let's say we don't want this content. I'm going to select no, and it's going to go grey because I should also select no in the main table. So I'm going to return back and then again select no here, and it will set everything in black. Basically, we're going to work through the timetable accordingly and decide what we want to include or exclude along the way. Now, as we continue working down the list, I want to draw your attention to the curveballs. Now, curveball are those unexpected events that are regular occurrences during emergencies and can significantly impact on what one has planned. It's nice to be able to see a full selection of these in one view so you can decide which ones you would like to include. To do that, you simply click the curveball button here, and you will see at the same time that it goes onto your selection. That's because it's just consolidating our selection of curveballs. Now, as we go through this, you can quickly run through the list and decide which ones to include or exclude, and in the same way refer to the details of those by using the coding and the EMS function. So again, we've got one PR10 here under Programs. I select Programs, one PR10. I don't want to include this. I'm going to select no. It goes black. I return to the timetable, and I continue doing the same. So now to return back to the default selection and carry on going through the table, select full selection, and we continue with the same process that I've already gone through on a couple of incidences already. We're just going to take one more example. Let's have a look at the staff services, staff care plan. I'm going to go into the PNC HR function here, and that's 1 SSP PNC 9. So we go down here. Let's say in this case I don't want to include that example. I select it out. I go back to my timetable. I select that again out, and now it's going to go black. And let's just say for the time being that we've done this through the whole 3-day process, and we have roughly drafted up our SimEx content. I can select our content here, and you'll see all the blacks and greys disappear, and we say here we have our materials. Excellent. So the final thing for us to do is to click this button, SimEx Complete, and we follow the instructions. What you're going to have to do is open a fresh Excel file into which you're going to copy and paste material from here into that file, which will give you more flexibility in adding rows if you want to add more content. So as you can see, we're going to be drawing material from our consolidated SimEx timetable. Simply copy and paste your content and place it into your new file. We return back to the SimEx Complete, and we move on to the inject materials. And again, you can copy and paste this content into a fresh sheet of your SimEx file. Return back to SimEx Complete and follow the same process for these other options below. So for example, this is the only different one, standalone files. Here you're going to select your selection, open each file, and then save it into a fresh folder. Return to SimEx Complete and do the same thing for participants list, etc. You've now formulated your basic SimEx content. Your job is to add, refine, and contextualize your SimEx to make it the best learning experience ever. I hope you have a lot of fun. Watch the space. This app is going to be improving over the next few months. Thanks for your time. Bye.